Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day, happy belated July 4th for all of our American viewers. I know that I did the usual July 4th thing, which was a little barbecue, some salad, went to go watch some fireworks at a nearby park. And I don't know about you, Kev and Russ, I have grown weary of going out for fireworks, but so many people go out and so many people try to get as close as they possibly can to the fireworks. In my older year now, I'm like, I'll stay like a mile away, watch the fireworks, and then want to escape quickly to avoid all the traffic and all the people walking around. I just, the fireworks ended at like 10, and by 10:15 I was back home. So that's fine with me. I didn't get right under the fireworks, but I was close enough to actually enjoy them.
Yeah, it sounds like a winning proposition. I didn't actually go to the fireworks. We saw them on Friday night. Terry and I were driving an hour away from our lake house, and as we drove home, we got to see each community's fireworks as we were driving down 94. So we had the best of all worlds. And then we got back, and then I didn't have much of a short drive because the Red Wings player development camp was on the 4th of July. And so, those, for those of you who don't know, those are pretty much all day affairs. They do drills, and then the players come. In our case, we got, 3 groups of players. So, you're there all day. So, I pretty much left my house at 9 o'clock in the morning, didn't get home till 5 or 6. So it wasn't much of a 4th of July for me. So
yeah, I just hunkered down with pets. Pets get really worried and scared. And I buy this thing called Comms, which takes the edge off a little. But I've got my TV blasted. Last night I had my TV blasted, and I was doing a lot of petting. So that was my 4th of July.
I was doing some because Sunday Sabres development camp opened, and I went to that. And then Monday I went up for Leafs development camp, and I got up early, like you said, it's all day affair, Kev, but it was a torrential downpour from basically crossing the bridge crossing the Queenston-Lewiston Bridge all the way up to Toronto. And then, of course, as soon as I pulled in the parking lot, it stopped. I was there for about 6 hours. And then, of course, no problem getting up there in terms of traffic, but then coming back, it was ridiculous. So
yeah. Well, the biggest thing now is they've just expanded those player development. The Red Wings was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and today was the 3-on-3 tournament. Well, you got to reward yourself and go to that if you've gone the first 4 days. Because I like the 3-on-3. It gives you a sense of whether the players can skate and what their hands are like and everything else. So I got the first time I had seen Danielson. I had never seen him live. I know Russ has. Very, very smooth player.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I would say. Just kind of a classy player.
Yeah.
Always is where he needs to be. The puck seems to follow him around. Gifted skater, not blazing gifted, but just smooth. Can cut inside and tremendous defensively. He's just always right next to the guy. So, and the other gun that I know Russ has already talked about, Sandin Pellikka.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, so dynamic. But he's a long way away. He's 170 pounds, if that. So he's
not going to be any more than 180, 185 though. He won't.
Yeah, that's fine. But the biggest chuckle of the day, Carter Mazer was talking about, and he's in remember he's in a group of 10, 15 sports writers. And he said, the biggest challenge for me, of course, is gaining weight. And he goes, everyone, you understand how difficult it is to
I can tell you how
to gain weight. And everybody started laughing. And Art Regner, who's a local radio man turned Red Wings employee, said, no one in this room has any trouble again.
Right. Yeah. And tomorrow's the Sabres 3-on-3 tournament, the scrimmage, and Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm going to go up for the Leafs one on Saturday, but you're right. They are like really long affairs. It's like 5-6 day development camps, but that's basically it until
Right.
until
The
September.
rookie camp right before.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta save your stuff. Like I know for Russ, it's just a matter of he's just doing scouting reports and filing away. But even if you're gonna write this in terms of featurizing it, we'll still be milking all this.
Oh yeah.
By late August, early September. So
Russ, do you have anything pre-show or?
No, just get right into it. That was a good pre-show.
Okay, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 5th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen from Detroit Hockey Now.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, why don't we start with Detroit, Kev, because I have to say that at least from like the perspective of like people in Toronto and some, I think a lot of the hockey community, Yzerman's been taking a few arrows for some of the free agent selections that they've made. My opinion on Justin Hall as well.
Right. Yeah.
I won't go down that road, but Gostisbehere and Kristen Fisher on a 1-year deal. Some of the 1-year deals are fine, but the money on JT Compher on a 5-year deal, and Justin Hall $3.4 million for 3 years. What is the Detroit perspective on that?
Well, it has been a mixed bag. I think your assessment is fair. I think he has been taking some arrows on that. Although, he's kind of got the old Henry Ford line, never complain, never explain. Like, he would just shrug if you said,
Right.
Like that's just not his thing. He's not too worried about what the general public thinks and what he's doing. But, if you tear each one down, like I think the Gostisbehere one might have been his best signing.
Yeah.
Because, and again, he learned from Ken Holland, and Ken Holland said many, many times, and there's a lot of truth to this. You can sign anybody for 1 year. You can make anything work for 1 year.
Right.
And I think that's the way Yzerman saw it. He went out, and I've said this before, but Yzerman doesn't tell you what his plans are, but he drops big hints. And it was pretty clear at his season-ending State of the Union address that he wanted to improve his power play. He wanted to get grittier and tougher. He wanted to add some scores. And he did all those. The problem is there weren't a lot of great guys available. So he had to take what he could get. And the Gostisbehere, he'll be the number 2 power play guy. And that was the going rate. He didn't pay any less than others were willing to pay. But he only got him 1 year. He wanted 4 years. Somebody said, I'll give you 1. And it's good for both, because if Gostisbehere has a good season, he'll be able to come back and get a longer term deal. He'll probably want to stay because, it would mean the Red Wings gave him an opportunity. And if he doesn't, then Yzerman is not on the hook for that one. So I think that was a good signing. I think where he got in trouble is a lot of people thought that the 5-year for Compher was too long. But I think the argument from the Red Wings perspective is he's young enough to be part of their core group. And they see him as that. The argument I would make is, he's never been a 20-goal scorer. And that's the rub that you hear about Kopp is that, he's only scored 20 goals one time. So Compher has had 10 more points than Kopp last year, but, it's not like he's a 75-point scorer. So,
No,
5 years.
I like Compher in the sense that I felt like they looked at him and said, he could play 2C, and we're going to need someone to do that. And this is the low-end cost of a 2C. And so with what he does defensively and the points that he will put up, even if he doesn't score 20, is pretty good. Now, do I think Kopp has been really good for the Red Wings? He's been mild. And I think that probably forced Yzerman's hand on getting somebody else too. I didn't like the Hall signing just because I'm not a big fan, but that's the one I would get.
Yeah. I mean, there is history in Detroit of this, and I'm not suggesting that he's Hall of Famer Larry Murphy.
No.
But they ran, they being Maple Leafs, booed Larry Murphy out of Toronto, blamed him for just, that he was a turnover machine, very similar actually to Hall. And of course he came to Detroit, and he instantly found chemistry with Nick Lidstrom. He became a staple on the Red Wings power play, and he found a new lease on life. Hall doesn't have the same skills that Murphy does, but he could get new life too by playing in the Red Wings.
I'm going to use the old political line, Kev. I knew Larry Murphy. Larry Murphy was a friend of mine. Sir, you're no Larry Murphy. I mean, Justin.
Yeah, I don't think anybody believes he's Larry Murphy. I think the point is you can move in and sometimes get a fresh start. Now,
I mean, he will get a fresh start. There is breaking news. Vladimir Tarasenko has new representation. JP Barry and Pat Brisson are now his agents. So they're resetting the deals and going to try again, it looks like.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's tough news, I think, for Carolina because, if they could have gotten him, they suddenly have the guy they thought they had last year in Pacioretty before he got hurt twice. So,
okay, let's move to that because we'll talk about some other teams. I want to go around a little bit, but the Tarasenko thing, he's clearly, I think, the biggest name that's still unsigned out there, next to Matt Dumba. And there's some speculation about Dumba going to Arizona because Arizona's got so much cap space, so they can afford to overpay.
I don't think it's going to happen, but they could.
Right. I mean, it seems to be right now. You either have, and this always happens, but with the cap going up next year, a lot of these players willingly read the market and said, "I'll take the 1-year deal because there's going to be a lot more money out in the market next year." Especially if I like Tyler Bertuzzi signed a 1-year deal with the Leafs. At the worst, if he has a good year and he goes out in the market next year, he's probably going to get that $6.5 to $7 million deal on a long term. If he likes it in Toronto in January, he can sign an 8-year extension. So he's got options. But the 1-year deal, apparently, Kev, he was offered 5-6-year deals out there. He just didn't like what he was being offered in terms of AAV because the cap is so constrained right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue as well. I mean, it was a strange free agent signing period there the first couple of days because, first of all, it was short on bigger name players. Mm-hmm. Bertuzzi was one of the few guys in there. I mean, really the most desirable player might have been Killorn, and, he's not exactly a star, but he's a very good player. So I don't know if general managers knew exactly what to do, but I think players sort of figured out, look, you got to do what's right for you in terms of moving and take whatever money, and then we'll worry about it next year. Because I think that's what a lot of players did.
I don't begrudge any player for taking the money because obviously their careers are finite, Russ. But Killorn, clearly, he's won his cups. And now he's going for the payday, and he's going for the nice weather in Anaheim, and he's going to be a leader with the Ducks, to show some of these young players how to be the right. But he's making $6.25 for 4 years for a team that really for the next 2 or 3 years has little or no chance of winning. He's going there to be a leader, not to be a winner like he's been in Tampa.
Yeah. To be paid well too. I mean,
Well, he's getting paid really top of the line money, more than he's probably worth. But, Anaheim feels like they need a player like that there. That's good for them. Speaking of players taking the money, a funny thing, this happened at the Combine. So Adam Fantilli, there's a video of him signing his contract with Columbus, and Gavin Brindley, who was also his Michigan teammate, was watching him sign the contract in Columbus, and he was there because they're in camp. And I asked Gavin Brindley, because he was speaking so much about Fantilli, would he be his future agent? And Mike probably remembers, and he started laughing about that. He goes, you never know, because he was in those are the kinds of courses he's taken in college. Meanwhile, he was witnessing his first contract 2 weeks later. It's kind of funny how that turned out.
Well, okay, but let's touch on a few teams. The Boston Bruins are really in a state of flux. It sounds like Krejci is not coming back. There's still whispers out there about Bergeron. He might not. There hasn't been an announcement yet. I mean, I'm getting the feeling, Kev, that this is probably not going to go on until like August or September before he really decides whether he wants to come back. But they really have no fallback here. I mean, right now their number one center is Charlie Coyle. Pavel Zacha is going to move into the middle. They've added, they bring back Milan Lucic. They add JVR. I mean, this team is not winning the President's Trophy. I think I'm going out on a limb to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think they're the team probably we know least about for next season. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion in Detroit about the fact that they own the Bruins first round pick, and that could be anywhere from 15 to, 30. They could, still come back and play well. So you just don't know where it's going to be. So, but they got to get Bergeron back. If I had to guess, I would have guessed before that Krejci would retire and Bergeron would stay. So, and that's probably still where I figure. I think Bergeron will come back and play one more year.
Now, Russ, Buffalo, sort of underwhelming, but I think, decent strategic signings. Eric Johnson, which I wrote for Buffalo Hockey Now, that I predicted that Johnson would be the guy that they would go in and bring in because, I didn't think they wanted to make the long-term commitment to somebody. And, as a one-year guy, as a right-handed guy, as a former number 1 overall pick, playing with Owen Power, that he would be sort of a good mentor. And then they signed Connor Clifton. And that's basically it. The surprising thing is Kevin Adams is sticking to his guns and saying, I'm going with Devin Levi and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen as the goaltending tandem. I put me on the record. I think it's a mistake. I think it could cost him a playoff spot because I don't trust Luukkonen, but they're going to stick with that. What do you think of the Sabres moves?
Yeah, and they re-signed Cale Clegg, which was good because he ended up playing a fair amount last year. He's a good depth guy. Yeah, I think they're going to end up looking for a goalie at the deadline. I think that's the way they're going to go. And just because things did get so close last year, I think it's a mistake by Kevin Adams to be completely sold on these two to start the season. And he was speaking that way at the draft. So it wasn't just like I'm pulling this now. I was watching him speak at the draft, and he was basically saying the same things. So good for him. But again, Kev, if we go to history and look at how many first-year goalies won the Calder, it's not that many.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would thought they would get a veteran goalie too. The problem is the goalie market really didn't materialize like it appeared. It looked like there wasn't going to be any goalies, and then it looked like it was going to be a buyer's market because suddenly Hellebuck and Gibson and Jari May was going to be in. Well, Jari resigns. Carolina re-signed both Ranta.
Yeah, that one is tough, Kev. I don't get it.
That's a head scratcher.
Which part of it? I mean, you got them.
Bringing the same guys back, like what the results have been the last few years. I mean, I get it. They're trying to bulk. They bulked up defensively. They're trying to get a little more offense, but you are sitting pat in goal. And again, we know they have.
Why do you think they did that? Do you think that they identified a guy they wanted and he wasn't available, or?
I don't know. I don't know the reason.
They didn't think they had good options.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, all I can say is if I am Peter Kochetkov's agent, I'm starting to say, is this guy ever going to be able to? I mean, he's got a 4-year deal. He's got waiver exemption, so they're going to send him down to the AHL this year. But okay, and he's getting paid, so he can't complain about that. But he probably wants to play in the NHL, and this was his opportunity with both veteran goaltenders as UFAs. And now they sign one for 2 years, one for a year. And Kochetkov, he's not going to be the third goalie. He's going to be playing in the American Hockey League. And if I'm pissed.
How old is he now, Russ? I mean, you know the answer to that.
He's 24.
22, I think.
Yeah.
I'll check.
I think, they just think he's not quite ready. Like, they love him. But, they just feel like they need veteran guys. I mean.
24.
24.
22 in 313 days.
So
okay, I have him as being 24, but then they go. No. Yeah, June 25th, 1999. He's 24 years old.
So, but still, I mean, 24. In goalie years, and I think the big thing
is at 22. Just to tell you.
Okay.
So, but I think the big thing for them is, Ranta signed for $1.5 million.
Right.
And Anderson was 3.4, I think. Neither one of them got a long-term deal.
Right.
So I think they felt, that it was better to have three, good options here than, go in with just the young guy. So
here would be my basic ask on this, and I don't have any idea, but did they even look into the John Gibson market?
I think they did, but the cost is really high, obviously. I mean, that's why, there's a reason why Hellebuck is not traded yet.
Well, Hellebuck I get, because he's not going anywhere for a year, and you probably got to sign him for 7 or 8 if he does decide and trade. But Gibson's isn't that long, but it's 6.4, and I don't think
they would be willing to pay the money. I think it's the compensation. So
the cost certainty with Gibson is the attractive thing as opposed to Hellebuck.
Yeah.
But okay, so Carolina, they add Michael Bunting on a 3-year deal, $4.5 million. They re-sign Jordan Staal. They sign Orlov for 2 years at $7.75. And Kev, they're talking about, they are one of the 2 or 3 teams that are heavily connected to Erik Karlsson, which would make me believe that if they're going after Karlsson, that either Pesce is part of the deal or Pesce is being moved out to facilitate fitting his salary in.
Yeah, no, I would say so. I think they really want Tarasenko, though. I mean, they really feel they need offense, and with the pronouncement that he's changing agents, I would think the Hurricanes now, if they thought that they had him, are going to be irritated as well, and they may be moving on as well. So so he could end up. We've heard the Islanders, we've heard the Senators. So
the Senators' connection with Tarasenko is in regards to them moving DeBrincat. He would be a DeBrincat replacement. If the Islanders signed him, then they'd probably have to move out of salary. So there's some options there, and it's the chess pieces on the board are interesting. Now Colorado they had a couple strange. Now the Johansson move at 50% is fine. I have no problem with it. Miles Wood, I've always liked Miles Wood as a player, but he's had a checkered injury history. But they signed him to a Lou Lamoriello type 6-year contract at $2.5 million. The AAV is not bad on this deal, but the term is nuts.
It's a little bit longer, but I think that speaks to that whole thing about, if you're like, you would say at the worst, Miles Wood is an average player, and he's coming in at a below average salary. But as you point out, the term could be too long. What kind of player will he be at the end of that? So, but you get the AAV the way you like it. You don't mind giving the extra year. That seems to be
but this seems like an extra 2 or 3 years for me.
Yeah. How old is he? I mean, I lose track.
27.
It's not the age. It's really the effectiveness. Like, what's he going to be? I mean, it's got good speed, but
it's the wear and tear. He's had. I mean, the last year he was healthy. The previous 2 or 3 years, he missed sizable chunks of the season because of the way he plays. He's a very physical player.
It sounds like their basically their actions are hoping the cap goes up a lot, so this contract's not going to be talked about. But you never know.
Now, Russ, the move that I think everybody has expected for 3 or 4 years finally happened, which is Jonathan Drouin ending up with his line mate from junior, Nathan McKinnon, in Colorado. But he goes there on a 1-year deal for a prove-it deal for $825,000. And if he can stay healthy and if everything else, like the off-the-ice issues, are straightened out, this could be a home run for Colorado.
Yeah, it's a lot of years later, though. It is. Yes. I mean, I saw those guys play together, with Halifax. I forget where I saw a game, but it was somewhere in Quebec. And look, I mean, back then, Drouin was scoring his last year there 108 points, but that was 2013-14. So it's a long time ago. I'm sure the familiarity's there. It's not like he's lost speed. But I don't know. Is he really going to be on a line with McKinnon?
No,
probably not. But
I mean, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the NHL,
long trip from one place to the other. I agree. So, but just the fact that he has a teammate on the team and familiarity, you give it a shot.
I mean, it's a can't. We talked about this the other day. Like every team now is strategizes to have 7 or 8 players less than $1 million, And he's a good roll of the dice. He's got some skill and talent, and he's not going to cost much, especially on a 1-year deal. So,
agree.
Now, can we say that I can't say that their window is closed, but let's just say it's going to be a completely different Tampa Bay Lightning team. Killorn is gone. They've traded Patrick Maroon to Minnesota. They've traded Corey Perry to Chicago. And I look at their lineup right now. They added Connor Sheary on a 3-year deal at $2 million a year, which he's a decent third, fourth line guy. But you look at the bottom of the lineup, and it's Luke Glendening and Logan Brown and Calvin DeHaan. It's not the same. They lose Ian Cole to, I think, at Vancouver. This is not your dad's Tampa Bay Lightning. I think the era has passed. I mean, the stars are still there, and if they play, if Hedman can keep playing the way he's been playing, and Kucherov at age 30 keeps playing, then they'll be competitive. But I just don't know now whether they have don't have the same depth that they did, and I don't know how good they're going to be.
I would think if you're a Tampa Bay fan, though, this is what your hope is. They have a collection of still really, really good hockey players.
Yes.
And they have a goaltender. Mm-hmm. And so, is there a chance to be the momentum team on a given year? The one thing we know is, Brisebois is a bit of a magician when it comes to the cap. So, let him work his magic and add a couple of players and just see if they can be that team that catches fire, and who knows. But I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, what made the Lightning was not only their talented player, but it was all their depth. And now that depth is eroded to the point that it's not recognizable. So they're in tough shape. But I still, would you be shocked if they were one of the top 3 teams? I would.
They still could do that. I mean, Hedman's still there.
Any team with Perry or any team with Cirelli and Point and Stamkos and Kucherov and Hedman, I'm scared of because they have championship pedigree, and if these other pieces plug in, then I'd still be afraid of them. I still think they're going to be in the battle for one of the top 3 spots in the Atlantic. I mean, that's something we can talk about going closer to the beginning of next season. It's been Boston, Toronto, Tampa, almost every year for the last, Florida mixed in there for a year or two, but it's been those 3. I don't think it's etched in stone that it's going to be Boston. I don't think it's etched in stone that it's going to be Tampa or even Toronto. I mean, I think you've got teams in that division that are all moving up that will challenge them. Now, I question, with Buffalo, the goaltending, with Ottawa, the goaltending, because it's Korpisalo and their defense still. And Detroit, I would say their offense would be the big question, Kev?
Yeah, for sure. Really, it's the whole team. They're just not there yet. They've got a lot of quality young players, but they're, Yzerman repeated even a couple of days ago. He pretty much said, and you can take him at his word, is, Edmondson does not have a guaranteed spot on this. In fact, I think it's unfair to think that he's going to play, So, I saw Marco Casper in development camp, and, you can see the potential star qualities that he has, but he doesn't seem ready to me, he's ultra competitive. So anyway, they're just not strong enough everywhere. And I don't know. Husso doesn't measure up to some of the top goalies in the league. I think right now he's probably a mid-range NHL goalie. So,
Russ, I look at the Vancouver Canucks and I see a team with their wheels spinning. They keep they bring in Carson Soucy on a 3-year deal. They add Ian Cole. They traded for Roenick before the deadline, but their defense really, I don't think it's anywhere greatly improved from what it was last year. And up front, they really didn't. They added Teddy Bluger. This team, I think they're just going nowhere sometimes.
Yeah, I'd say they got a little better on defense, and they just added on the edges to the offense, and they have good goaltending. But yeah, I worry about this team because they never rebuilt, and now they're sort of in that. Well, we're going to keep trying to get better because we're going to try and be competitive, and we're going to try and make the playoffs, and that's a hard road to go, especially when you're not producing a lot of prospects to throw into your pool. I mean, that's what's killing them. Their player development's been bad.
Yeah. I think one of the big stories over the last week or so from the draft to now are the stories that didn't happen, Kev. And the two teams I look at are Calgary and Winnipeg. Because, okay, in Winnipeg, they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois. They did pretty well. They can't get a deal done for Hellebuck because they're not getting what I think they think he's worth. They haven't traded Scheifele. There's talk now about them going back to both players and trying to convince them to stay. In Calgary, they haven't traded Hannafin, but it's out there that Hannafin's not going to re-sign. They haven't gotten any word from Elias Lindholm, Backlund, and I mean, it's limbo right now for Craig Conroy and for Kevin Cheveldayoff because they have players clearly who are not going to stay there, but they haven't moved them yet.
Yeah, I think the Hellebuck one is the one that's really bothering because I'm not really totally convinced that they've made a real strong effort to trade Scheifele. I think they've thought all along they might be able to convince him to stay. And, you know, guys like him, the centers his size are hard to find. So I think they want to give it a go to try to, I mean, because they can always move him at the trade deadline provided he doesn't get hurt.
Right.
So I think, but the Hellebuck is, you know, they want to get paid as if, you know, there's no extenuating circumstances. By that, I mean that he doesn't have a gun to their head because he has all the leverage. And, you know, they want to make that trade as if it's, you know, in the 1960s and you just make major trades all the time. And,
right.
You know, New Jersey seems like a good fit, but they don't want to pay that price, which is just way too heavy. And, you know, same thing is true with Erik Karlsson. Like, yeah, they've agreed that he should be traded, both parties, but, you know, from what I've been told, they're asking exactly what they did last time. So if you want them, you got to throw in a couple of first-round picks. And, you know, no one seems willing to do that.
Russ, I mean, what do you think of those situations right now?
Which teams again? Sorry, I lost.
Calgary and Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, Calgary, I'm not sold on where they're at. I'm not sure they're a playoff team. I'm not. I have to be convinced. I don't love their team. They're sort of like in between. Winnipeg, I think could still pull it out because I could see Hellebuck just playing out this season there. Like I just can't.
They don't get. I mean, they can't get nothing for him, and they're in a position where it's sort of like what Toronto is with Nylander. They need a return, but they don't. You know, I mean, if they trade Hellebuck, they have no goaltending.
Right, so they might be willing to take just the draft pick they get for trading his rights at the draft. That may be what they accept, and if they do that, yeah, they could probably make the playoffs, even losing Wheeler. I still think they still have enough there. The fact that Morrissey made a big jump helps them, and Ehlers is healthy. Scheifele, you know, I don't know how much longer he'll be there, but he's there. So I still think they still look like a playoff team.
Yeah, and I don't think – I mean, Calgary clearly is going through the transition now from the group that they had to the young guys like Coronado and Zeri and Peltier, and you know they want to play their younger guys, but the thing is that you have to get value for the players that you know are not going to stay after next year. There's talk about Hannafin in Boston. There's talk about some of their defense like Tanev or Zadorov or Rasmus Anderson, you know, more of the first two with Toronto because Treliving knows them and he wants to get bigger on defense. But I mean, a lot of teams, Kev, are in the situations here where they have players with 1 year left, and they've told teams that they're not going to sign there or they're asked on long-term contracts. And they know, you know, because the cap is going to go up is ridiculous or to the point of they just can't afford it. But these teams are sort of between a rock and a hard place because they're getting pennies on the dollar in terms of offers from other teams. It's really a bad place for a manager to be.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't even think it's taking the leverage because it's there. I think it's mostly they can't afford it.
Right.
New Jersey doesn't feel strong about giving up. They've got to this good place now, but they don't want to give up. All that Winnipeg is asking, and I just think they want too much. I think they're unrealistic in their approach. So, and I think that the problem with Hannafin is that he wants a long-term deal. At least that's what we keep hearing, and teams just don't want to give those out anymore. Except for certain players, and I don't think Hannafin is one of those guys.
Yeah,
the chat room points out Lindholm hasn't even accepted a big money deal that's on the table.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Hannafin is 26. He was in the same draft as Matthews, and same draft as Marner and McDavid.
Yeah.
And he's a very good defenseman. He's a top 4 defenseman. He's not a righty. He's a lefty, which is always a factor because righties, as we saw from this free agent class, are getting overpaid because they're righties. But yeah, I mean, apparently it's well known out there that he'd love to go to Boston. And he simply could just wait a year and not, they could trade him, but they want to trade him to some place that they can maximize the value for. But if he only wants to go to Boston, it's sort of like, Dubois only wanted to go to Montreal. It's not impossible that, they trade him someplace else that he accepts it to, but
plus does Boston really want him?
Right.
Right, that's the question.
I'm sure they like him, but they've made some commitments there. They like their defense. So
now Russ, we saw what the Rangers did. I mean, some of it, okay, cost wise, it didn't cost them a lot. They got Quick, they got Wheeler, they got Bonino, they got Tyler Pitlick. They got Eric Gustafson, all for under $1 million each. Okay, so that's not bad business. They signed a bunch of 30 pluses, so they got a lot older. But these are just these are complimentary guys. But you look at their situation now, and they've got 2 big glaring RFAs, Alexis Lafreniere and Keandre Miller, and they only have $6 million in cap space. So that's what Chris Drury has to tackle over the next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, they'll figure those out in bridge deals, but the problem that Chris Drury has done here is, you're bringing in another coach that you're trying, and again, this is now the 3rd guy in a short amount of time that you're trying to satisfy with his kind of players, and the players that are going by the wayside are the younger players. Like they just signed Zach Jones to a 2-year deal, and now you bring in Gustafson. They do the same thing. So now it's like, okay, like Eric Gustafson really hasn't been good at his job for a couple years, but Laviolette likes him, so he's going to give him a go. So he'll probably get more opportunity than Zach Jones at the beginning. Okay, so then you have that. As far as Lafreniere and Kakko go, just as an example, I don't know how much playing time they're going to get under Laviolette. They may get the same as Gallant. They may get less. That's going to be a telltale thing because, again, for every Ranger fan that wants to call Lafreniere a bust, I mean, you can't call him a bust if he almost had 40 points. If you want to say, hey, first overall should be better than that, okay. But again, there's been a lot of different things there too. He's had 3 different coaches. He hasn't played top power play much. Second power play doesn't get a ton of time on the Rangers. His best line has been the kid line. He hasn't really gotten to play with most anybody else for any length of time. So, like, this is the hand he's dealt. And, like, Ranger fans are already consigned themselves to the fact that he's going to get dealt somewhere and do well there. Like, this is the problem right now that Chris Drury has caused is he took over a team that was rebuilding from David Quinn and got rid of David Quinn and then started trying to advance it, got to the conference finals ahead of schedule, and now all of a sudden they're an older team again. Like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it put in a perfect world, they get both of those guys signed to bridge deals, but I don't know whether Miller is going to take anything less than say $4 million a year on a 2-year bridge deal or something like that. I mean, you might have to sign him to 1-year deals and wait until the cap goes up next year to be able to take, and they might be amenable to that because other teams have been able to do that. Now, Kev, in Buffalo and talking to other reporters and in Toronto, there seemed to be a unanimity of opinion in terms of a team that really spent badly, and that was the Pittsburgh Penguins. Especially the Tristan Jarry 5-year extension at over $5 million. I know that in Pittsburgh they weren't very happy about it because Jarry has been somebody who's been injured consistently at the worst time of the year. Good goaltender, has had good years, but just that problem at not being available, and they give him a 5-year extension. They do that. They get Ryan Graves for 6 years, and I like Ryan Graves as a defenseman, but 6 years at $4.5 million. They bring in Lars Eller on a 2-year deal. That's fine. Noel Acciari was getting 1-year deals the last 3 years from teams, and now all of a sudden he gets a 3-year deal with $2 million. And then they trade for Riley Smith and take on $5 million a year. So some moves I understand, some moves I'm a little questioning. I'm wondering, like, they're trying to support that veteran group, and that might be the marching orders for Kyle Dubas. But
I think it is for sure. Yeah. I don't disagree with the especially the fan base that's concerned about the Jarry thing. Plus I just felt, didn't it just feel like it was time to move on?
It did. We know that. But we know that Sullivan likes Jarry, so that probably got him signed.
No, that is true. That Sullivan really is a big believer in Jarry. I like the Acciari deal, actually. Again, I always talk about average salary, but he's a helpful player. Yeah. $2 million. That's not much more than the bottom level. He's on your team. You know what you got there. You can pencil him in the bottom 6 and all goes well. And I really like the Smith deal. I mean, 1 year was left on that at $5 million. And, they were looking for one more scorer. They lost Zucker. And they've never been happy with Zucker, even when he's produced. It's just, there was just something about him that he didn't seem to fit quite right with the way that Crosby and Malkin played. So, maybe Riley Smith is simply a better option than Zucker there. So the Graves thing, I don't even understand 6 years.
No,
not whatsoever. I really like him as a player though. And 4.5 is a reason.
What are you doing?
Is a reasonable amount for that type of player now. That seems to be the going rate, 4.5. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like 4.5 in 4 years would seem like a more reasonable approach to Graves.
So Russ, the Flyers, even when they have firmly established a stance of being a rebuilding team, they go out and they sign Garnet Hathaway for 2 years. They bring, Ryan Poehling is still a young guy, so there's a chance there for him to sort of, reclimate his career. They bring, Mark Stahl they bring in basically to be a minutes eater. He's going to do the same thing that he did in Detroit a couple years ago. But yeah, this team is going to be really bad, aren't they?
No, they will. And I think on defense now they may be limiting some of their young players to being able to break in early in the year with the Mete signing now. But look, I get the Hathaway one. That's fine. I mean, he may even be playing third line for them, which I don't recommend for any team. But, it could end up happening. He may have to – we'll see if he switches to left wing because they kind of need a left wing. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Stahl. He'll help guys. I mean, we know he's slow, but he's good around the net and he's good in the locker room. So that's fine. The Poehling thing is the guy I've been rooting for him for a couple of years in the sense that I would just like him to be able to stay healthy. He hasn't been able to play over 50-something games the last couple of years. He's got offensive ability and speed. You do kind of really pull for those kinds of guys. He'll be the fourth-line center. If he could get through a full season, it could really help his season. But that's going to be the question with him. The ability's there. Like, he's a decent hockey player, but we'll see.
Kev, I thought this was hilarious, but this is not the first time a general manager comes out and says, and Danny Barrera came out and said, well, Travis Sanheim is off the block. Okay, yeah, you tried to trade him to the four corners of the universe, and you couldn't because he's got 8 years left at 6.25. But now he's off the block. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that means we couldn't trade him. He was untradeable at that price for sure. Yeah, and I'm starting to wonder whether Konechny was actually really available.
I think it was one phone call. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think because I again, I'm just reading the tea leaves here. I have no inside information, but it just seems like the Red Wings were far more interested in Konechny than DeBrincat. I mean, it's not that they didn't like DeBrincat, but the Konechny gave them more of what they wanted. He's a little grittier.
And
so
it seems like Maria had like a 10-minute phone call with Yzerman. That's what I think happened. And Yzerman's just like, all right, nothing's going to happen here.
Right.
And he never called back.
You've got three guys like that. I think that was the case with Konechny. That was the case with Lawton. Remember, he was out there, and that was the case with Carter Hart. They were put out as feelers. Okay, we'll take calls. And when they didn't get blown away by offers for any of the three of them, they said, okay, no.
Right. Yeah. I do think they wanted a lot. And to be honest, I don't think Yzerman ever wanted to trade either of those first-round picks.
Right.
I think he was saying, I'll give you second-rounders, and I got a bunch of them. So,
yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that's just, again, I'm just guessing because, that doesn't leak out what Yzerman is doing. But
last thing here, because we mentioned him earlier, but it does seem that we're going down the path that Erik Karlsson is going to get traded. I just don't know where, and I'm going to be very curious to see how this deal is structured. I mean, we've heard Ottawa, we've heard Edmonton, we've heard Carolina, we've heard Pittsburgh. I mean, if it's a Pittsburgh, for example, Pittsburgh is right up against the cap. If they're trading Karlsson to Pittsburgh, then San Jose's got to be retaining significant salary, which they say they don't want to, or they're got to be taking back a guy like, say, Jeff Petrie because he's making over $6 million. I'm really wondering, Kev, how this deal is going to fall out wherever he goes.
Well, and what's Pittsburgh going to give them? They want like a big return. It's like, I don't think it's enough for San Jose just to regain the cap space.
Right.
Like I think they want more.
They need more than that.
Yeah. So and what does Pittsburgh actually have? Their prospect number is bare.
Well, they have their first round picks, but the thing is, Kyle Dubas has a history. Remember, in the 5 years he was general manager in Toronto, he traded his first round pick every single year.
Yeah, I can see him trading 2 firsts.
Yeah,
and somebody in their system or off the roster.
And Jeff Petrie to clear the cap.
And Jeff Petrie. Yeah, that's what I could say.
Yeah. How many years does Petrie have left, though?
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years at 6.25 as opposed to 4 years at 11.5.
Right. So
he's got a no move. I don't know. Can you see him blocking a trade to Northern California? The weather's nice, Jeff. But yeah.
He's a Midwest boy. He's a Michigan boy. So
yeah, he might block it.
But anyway, all right. Great show, guys. We'll be back later in the week with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.